I get a lot of common questions about what I do for work, and believe it or not, who does this guy think he is, or where did AutoTrader find this moron, aren't even the ones that are asked the most. Instead, they're usually related to the trims of the different vehicles I drive, or to be more specific, why do I usually review the most expensive ones you can buy? And the short answer is, that's generally what automakers provide me to review. Think of this like a job interview, but for a car. Automakers want to look their best, and so the same reason that you probably wore khakis and a button-down shirt to interview for your first job flipping burgers, they want to make a good first impression. But it's still a valid question nonetheless, and it's one I want to try to answer with this Honda CR-V that's parked behind me. When I reached out to Honda Canada to book a CR-V, they offered me the fully loaded black edition, but I opted for this sport trim instead because I think it's perfect for this evaluation. Just think about it, this is easily one of the most popular crossovers in Canada, and a mid-grade trim like this should appeal to a lot of shoppers out there. And besides, it doesn't take away from any of the stuff that makes the CR-V so good. When you look at something like the Ford Escape, you really do want to shell out for the most expensive version to get the stuff that makes that one so good, and the same goes with the Toyota RAV4. You're really going to want to pay for the Trail or the Limited model to get the stuff that sets it apart. But here, Honda has kept it very simple, and it's all about space and safety. And that means that even if you pay for the fully loaded touring trim, it's really not going to feel all that special. I know from experience that doesn't really feel like a top-of-the-line model, but this one hits the mark to perfection, and it represents a great value. You're getting a lot of stuff for about 35 grand before fees and taxes. So let's talk about some of the features you get inside. No, these seats aren't leather, but they are heated up front just like every other CR-V trim, and the sport level is where you get this heated steering wheel, which is great to have. Another problem in here, this infotainment interface isn't all that great, and it only runs through a 7-inch touchscreen no matter which trim you opt for. But it does hit back with the fact that it's got both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration, so hooking up your smartphone is very easy, and it makes up for the shortcomings of the interface itself. And then when you're talking about the outside, you get stuff like roof rails, a power sunroof, 19-inch alloy wheels, and a power tailgate. There's also LED fog lights and turn signals built into the side view mirrors. So again, it's just a very well-rounded package, but the biggest benefit of the CR-V is just how much space it's got inside. When you're talking about small SUVs, the conversation really begins and ends with the CR-V when it comes to the space you get inside. Now, the Toyota RAV4 does come close, but this really is the segment leader by just about every interior measure. I mean, just look at that rear seat legroom. There's more space back there than you get in a Ford Expedition. I'm not even exaggerating. And the cargo area is ridiculous too. There's 2,150 liters back here with the rear seats folded, or 1,110 with them upright, but it's more than that, and there's lots of handy little tricks, like this height programmable tailgate, or these quick release handles just inside the tailgate to fold down those seats when you've got your hands full. But my favorite feature is just how low this liftover height is. It's like a station wagon, and that means you're not going to hurt your back when you have to heave something heavy into the back of the CR-V. It all adds up to make this a very useful little crossover. If all that isn't enough to appeal to you, well, I think you're crazy, but maybe this will. Honda has absolutely loaded this thing with just about every advanced safety feature it offers. There's stuff like forward collision warning, lane departure warning, automatic high beams, automatic emergency braking up front, lane keep assist, and adaptive cruise control. And most of it works pretty well, with the exception of the forward collision warning. It is very sensitive, and Honda's system is notorious for that, but I shut it off pretty early this week. The only other problem is it defaults back to on, so every time you get in the car, you have to shut it off again. Use this button down here by your left knee. It's just one more thing to remember. Don't get me wrong, it is nice to have advanced safety features like that, but this system could definitely use a little bit of tweaking to tone it down just a touch. But otherwise, there's even blind spot monitoring here, though it is a pretty basic and dated system. Instead of using sensors like you get in the CR-V touring trim, it uses a camera in the passenger side mirror. So what that does is it projects a live look at what's happening on that side of the vehicle on your infotainment screen. But the downside is it is very low resolution, so it projects a distorted image up here. Now, don't get me wrong, again, I'd rather have that feature in here than not, but it's not all that great, and I am looking forward to the day where Honda scraps this system in favor of using sensors in every trim it offers. Jumping back to that infotainment system for just a second, it is pretty small and slow to respond to touch inputs, but interacting with it is pretty straightforward, and the same goes with the HVAC controls. It uses simple buttons just below the touchscreen, so you can adjust the temperature or the fan speed pretty easily without even taking your eyes off the road. That is great, and the same goes with these steering wheel controls. There's lots of them, and they're very straightforward and easy to use. And that's kind of the case with this whole cabin. It's just very approachable. Getting in and driving is about as easy as it comes. Not many other vehicles are this simple, and there's no need to crack open the owner's manual to get a feel for what's happening in here. A couple quick notes about getting in and driving this thing, and the first one is going to depend on how tall you are, because as you can see, I'm just on the verge of being too tall for the slope of this windshield and roof. It feels like I'm sitting up really high, but I have this driver's seat as low as it will go. Something to keep an eye out for if you test drive the CR-V for yourself. And the other thing to take note, this driver's seat isn't all that comfortable. And it's not something I noticed when I drove the CR-V touring previously. But with this fabric upholstery here, it just doesn't feel all that nice, and it only took a couple hours for fatigue to set in, especially in my upper legs. That can be a problem if you plan on driving this thing a lot, so again, just something to keep an eye out for. And then there's the whole matter of what's powering this thing. There's only one engine available, and it's a 1.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that makes 190 horsepower and 179 pound-feet of torque. Not exactly impressive output, but it's right up there with the rest of the segment. If you take away the upgraded engines in some of the competitors, it's a player with vehicles like the Subaru Forester, the Toyota RAV4, or even the base engine in the Hyundai Santa Fe or Ford Escape. But that's really not what this engine's all about. It's about efficiency, because this thing does have standard all-wheel drive in this sport trim. It's fully automatic, so you can't control it at all, and that means it shuffles torque around to the wheels it needs to be at. So usually when you're cornering or accelerating, but it still manages to sip fuel like a smaller vehicle. I've been averaging 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers this week, and that's pretty close to the estimate provided by Enercan, and it's not far from the much smaller Kia Seltos that I drove not too long ago. I think I got about 8.1 liters per 100 in that thing, so considering just how much more space you have in here, well, it's a worthy trade-off that it's underpowered because it sips fuel like a smaller vehicle. Now, I should point out that there is an eco mode if you're looking to save just a little bit more fuel, but honestly, I would leave it alone. This thing already feels lethargic as it is, and I wouldn't want to do anything to make that even worse. Honda's trying to help you out with the addition of this ignition start-stop system that it added as part of some updates for 2020. So what that'll do is shut off the engine when you pull up to a red light or you're idling. It's a nice way to cut down on your fuel consumption and your emissions, but otherwise that's about all you get for engine control. If there was a weak point in this powertrain, and truth be told, it might be the weak point of this entire vehicle, it would be the continuously variable automatic transmission that comes mated to this motor. It is just so loud and buzzy. And the other problem is it lacks the simulated shift points that you usually get with a transmission like this. So that means once you get your foot on the gas, it just drones like crazy, and it stays that way until you let off the pedal. Very irritating. It kind of behaves like an electric vehicle in that way, and it seems like you've got this endless amount of power to tap into, only that runs very counter to how this behaves because you actually don't have much at all. But otherwise, this is a very easy vehicle to drive. It's pretty quiet overall in this cabin, and the suspension is nice and comfortable. It's just a hassle-free vehicle to operate. And in that way, it is the definition of an appliance of an automobile. No, it might not be the stand mixer that you want to leave out to show off to your friends, but it is the one you're going to use for absolutely everything. It's like one of those countertop units that's part deep fryer, part slow cooker, part pressure cooker, and it could also make ice cream. You don't really understand how it works, but it does, and it works really well. And it doesn't hurt that it's pretty affordable too. This sport trim falls pretty much smack dab in the center of the CR-V lineup. So the cheapest two-wheel drive only version is about $6,000 less, and the fully loaded touring model is $6,000 more. Now there is that black edition that I talked about earlier that adds $1,500, but that's basically just an appearance package, so let's forget about that one altogether and focus on that touring trim. Because the only stuff you're really giving up is leather upholstery, heated rear seats, and a proper sensor-based blind spot monitoring system. I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem like a whole lot of features to pay an extra $6,000 for. I think I'd be pretty happy with what I'm getting in this CR-V Sport. To recap, I love how spacious and versatile the CR-V's cabin is and how easy it is to get accustomed to. I don't like the buzzy CVT, the overly sensitive collision warning system, or the small touchscreen. So there you have it, a review of the version of a vehicle most shoppers might actually buy. And you know, this CR-V Sport makes a really good case for why you don't always need to spend a ton of money to get a great vehicle. Generally speaking, the CR-V's never done much in terms of wow factor, but man, it's easy to live with. And that's especially true of this Sport model. You get some nice added features that only highlight all the things the CR-V is good at, and you get it all for a fair price. Where some crossovers like this deliver noticeable improvements with the more money you spend, the Honda CR-V really puts its best foot forward right from the middle of the pack.
Subscribe.